I'm 25 and still trying to understand what happened to my family last year. We're not exactly a close-knit bunch, my mom's always been complicated. But this? Nothing could have prepared me for this. Last May, my mom disappeared. Just vanished. No note. No call. No text. Nothing. One day she was at her job at the local library, the next, she didn't come home. My dad, who she was technically still married to but hadn't shared a bedroom with in years, thought she'd maybe gone on one of her usual breaks. She used to do that, pack a bag and vanish for a weekend when things got too tense between them. She always came back, though. This time, she didn't. At first, we gave her space. She was stubborn as hell, and she'd made it clear she didn't want to be found. But after a week, I got scared. Her phone was off. Her car was still parked at work. She hadn't touched her bank account. I reported her missing. The cops did what they always do, filed paperwork, asked a few questions, then moved on. Months went by. We searched everywhere. Flyers, social media posts, calls to her friends and coworkers. It was like she'd just evaporated. My dad checked out completely, said she probably ran off with someone and didn't want to be found. That idea messed with me more than I'll admit. I kept imagining the worst. Did she crash her car somewhere remote? Was she living off-grid? Was she dead? I had no answers, just this unbearable silence. Until 1 month ago. Almost a year to the day she disappeared, she walked into my apartment like nothing had ever happened. I wasn't even home when it happened. I was out grabbing groceries, and my roommate texted me something that didn't make sense at first. "Your mom's here?" I remember staring at my phone for a full minute. I thought it was a joke. A sick one. Then she sent a photo. And there she was, my mother. In my apartment, sitting on our couch, smiling politely like she hadn't just missed 372 days of our lives. The worst part? She was wearing the same sweater and jeans she'd last been seen in. No bag. No suitcase. No phone. Just her, looking eerily calm. That photo hit me like a punch in the gut. I rushed home. The entire walk there, my chest was tight and my mind was racing. What was I supposed to say to her? Where had she been? Was she sick? Was she okay? Did she even know what she'd done to us? But when I walked through the door, all those questions evaporated because she smiled at me. Like nothing had happened. I didn't get a hug, not even a sorry. Just a casual "Hey, sweetie. You look good." I was frozen. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. My roommate awkwardly excused herself, and I just stood there, staring at this woman who had let me think she was dead for a year. And do you know what she said next? She asked if we had any tea. I kept asking her where she'd been, if she was hurt, if someone took her, if she had amnesia or something. But she just shrugged and said she needed space and that she was back now and hoped I could respect that. Respect that? She didn't offer a single detail. Not one. She wouldn't tell me where she stayed, who she was with, how she survived. I started pressing harder, and that's when her mood shifted. She said I was being interrogative and that I always had a problem letting things go. She made it sound like I was the one making things uncomfortable. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying it over and over, her voice, her blank expression, how she just sat there sipping tea like she hadn't watched my life burn from afar. But it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Almost like she'd rehearsed it. There was something off about her. And the next morning? It only got worse. The next morning, I found her standing in the kitchen, humming. Making pancakes. Like this was a normal Sunday morning from 10 years ago. She greeted me with that same unsettling smile and asked if I still liked strawberries on top. I didn't even answer. My stomach was too tight to eat, but I sat at the table just to observe her. Something was wrong. Not obviously wrong, not the kind of wrong you can point at and explain. But more like watching someone who looks like your mom, act like a bad copy of her. She moved differently. She smiled too wide. She didn't fidget the way she used to. Her laugh had a delay, like she had to remember to do it. I kept catching myself staring at her hands because they trembled slightly, like she was cold. Or scared. And then she excused herself to the bathroom. She left her coat on the back of the chair. I don't know what came over me. I just reached for it. Maybe I thought her phone would be inside, or some kind of clue. But all I found was an unmarked envelope tucked into the inner pocket. It was heavy. I opened it. Cash. A thick stack of $100 bills. And a photograph. That's when my heart nearly stopped. It was a picture of me. Sitting in my car. Taken from behind the driver's side window. The photo was recent. I was wearing the same sweater I'd had on last week when I drove to work. It was taken from outside the parking garage I used downtown. I stared at it, my hands shaking. There was no note, no name, just money, and that photo. I stuffed it all back in and dropped the envelope right where I found it. I didn't want her to know I'd seen it. When she came out of the bathroom, she looked at me a little too closely, like she knew something had shifted. I played dumb. Told her I wasn't feeling well. She nodded slowly, didn't press. She stayed exactly 2 more hours, then announced she was going to visit your father. No warning. No plan. Just that. I asked her where she was staying. She smiled and said, I have a place. Then she left. And I stood there, trying to figure out why my mother had a recent photo of me she couldn't have taken, and hundreds in cash from who knows where. I couldn't sleep again. My mind kept circling back to the photo. The angle. The lighting. It wasn't taken from the street. Whoever took that picture had been in the garage with me, standing behind the row of pillars near the exit ramp. The next morning, I drove back to my office early and headed straight to the security booth. The guy who works there is this old Vietnam vet who always smells like peppermint and pretends not to remember anyone's name. But he recognized me. I told him my car had been keyed a week ago. I made up a whole story about needing to file a report and just wanted to scan the tape for peace of mind. He grumbled, but eventually let me into the little back room where they keep all the monitors. I pulled up footage from the afternoon. I remembered wearing that sweater. Tuesday. Around 4:45 p.m. when I got back from lunch. And there it was. Me, walking to my car. Unlocking the door. Sliding in. And 30 seconds later, someone steps out from behind a column. She was blurry at first, the resolution wasn't great, but I knew that silhouette. The scarf. The way she held her purse. It was my mother. She watched me from the shadows. Just stood there, motionless, until my car pulled out of frame. Then she turned and walked the opposite direction, never looking at the camera. I nearly dropped the mouse. She'd been following me. Watching me. And she didn't want me to know. My stomach flipped. I thanked the guy and stumbled back to my car, shaking. I didn't even make it to work. I just sat there in the garage, gripping the steering wheel while my breath came in short, shallow bursts. She'd been gone for almost a year. Everyone thought she was dead. But she wasn't just alive, she was close. Close enough to stalk me. Close enough to stand behind a concrete pillar and take my picture. And if she was watching me, who else had she been watching? That night, I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring and sounded half drunk, as usual. When I asked if Mom had come to see him, he got quiet. Then said, yeah. Briefly. And then he told me something I didn't expect. She hadn't asked about me at all. After my dad told me she hadn't asked about me, something inside me broke. I wanted to believe there was some reason, some logic behind all of this. That she was protecting me, or scared, or sick. But hearing that she visited him and never even mentioned me? That hit like a punch to the chest. I stopped sleeping. I couldn't focus at work. I started checking her old social media accounts, her email, anything I could get into. Nothing. Everything was either abandoned or inactive. But one thing caught my eye. An email notification buried in her old Gmail inbox. A monthly auto payment receipt from a storage facility outside town. I recognized the name. It was the place she'd rented once before during our house renovation, to store books and furniture. That lease had ended years ago. But this receipt? It was recent, still active, paid up. I wrote down the address. The next morning, I drove out there. Told the guy at the front desk I was helping my mother move. I figured she'd used her old ID, and luckily, she had. He gave me the unit number without asking much else. Unit 314. It was tucked way in the back corner of the lot. The kind of unit you only get if you want privacy. My hands were trembling as I opened the lock. It was one of those coded ones where you punch in 4 digits. I guessed her birthday. It opened on the second try. Inside, it was organized. Not dusty. Not abandoned. Everything was packed in airtight bins. A camping stove. Bottled water. Clothing. A single mattress. And notebooks. Dozens of notebooks. They were stacked neatly in milk crates along one wall. Some spiral-bound, others leather-covered. I opened the top one. It was full of dates. Times. Locations. Names. Mine. My dad's. Even my old high school teacher. And then I found it, a page with my name circled. Next to it, lunch, corner booth, black sweater. Smiled at waitress. Stayed 36 minutes. Left phone unlocked on table for 8 minutes, possible vulnerability? I dropped the notebook. She'd been watching me longer than I thought. She was keeping records. Detailed ones. Like I was part of some operation. Or experiment. I stepped back and looked around the unit again, and that's when I saw something that hadn't registered before. There was a camera mounted in the top corner of the storage unit, pointed inward, recording everything. My mom had been filming herself, or someone else had been filming her. And I wasn't sure which one scared me more. I couldn't sleep that night. My brain kept running through every awful possibility. What if someone else had access to that camera? What if she wasn't watching me, but someone was watching her? The next morning, I went back to the storage unit. This time, I brought bolt cutters. I waited until the office guy went on his lunch break, then slipped around the back where the cameras didn't cover. I cut the padlock, slid the door up, and went straight for the corner. The camera was small, almost hidden. Wireless. A blinking red light told me it was still active. I unscrewed it from the bracket and found the memory card tucked into a slot underneath. Back home, I plugged it into my laptop and opened the folder. There were dozens of video files. Short clips, each one marked with a timestamp. The most recent file was dated the day after she showed up at my apartment. I clicked it. The feed was grainy and black and white, but clear enough. My mom stood in the center of the unit, pacing. She was holding one of the notebooks and talking out loud, but there was no sound. The camera had no microphone. She moved like she was anxious, kept turning toward the door, then toward the camera. Then, suddenly, she grabbed a marker and started writing something on the wall. I hadn't even noticed it before, hidden behind one of the crates. She pulled them aside and began scribbling frantically. I paused the video, hard hammering, and ran the clip forward until she stepped out of frame. I went back to the unit that evening. Took a flashlight. Moved the crates. The writing was still there, in huge, slanted letters. If they find me, do not trust me. I stared at it until my legs gave out. Sat down on the floor, trying to breathe. The marker was still on the shelf. Black. Sharpie. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes before I noticed something else. Next to the warning, she had drawn a symbol. It looked like a triangle, but distorted, one side longer than the others, with a single in the center. I recognized it. It was the same shape she used to doodle in the margins of her journals when I was a kid. I used to tease her about it, asking what it meant. She always brushed it off. Now she was using it to leave me messages. But the part that made my skin crawl? That symbol wasn't just in the storage unit. I had seen it before, scratched into the bottom of a bench at the bus stop near my office. I spent the next 48 hours spiraling. I kept staring at the symbol I'd seen in the storage unit, the triangle with the dot in the middle. It wasn't something random. It was deliberate. It meant something. I knew I'd seen it before, and not just in my mom's notebooks or on that wall. Once I thought about the bus stop, other memories came rushing in. A carved version of the same shape in the corner of a library study table. A faded sticker with that symbol on the back of a street sign by the park. I never paid attention back then. Just weird urban markings, right? Now I wasn't so sure. I spent the next day wandering the city, retracing routes I hadn't thought about in years. And I found it 4 more times. Always in subtle spots, under benches, behind dumpsters, scratched into the back of traffic poles. Always the same shape. But what chilled me to the bone was what I found posted on a message board in an old conspiracy subreddit that hadn't been active since 2021. A thread titled, "They Watch Through the Triad." The post was mostly incoherent rambling, lots of references to frequency windows, mirror agents, and something called the quiet zone. But the image at the top? It was the same symbol. The triangle, the slanted side. Exactly the way my mom had drawn it. One comment stood out. User, Glasseyed Fox. It just said, if you've seen the symbol in more than 3 places, leave. You're already on a path. That sent a chill straight down my spine. And then I saw the username. Glasseyed Fox. That's the same name my uncle used for his old burner account. My uncle, who died in 2019. Or at least, that's what we were told. He disappeared while hiking alone. His body was never found. It was ruled an accident. But what if it wasn't? I searched the username across different platforms. Found nothing recent. But then I did something stupid. I posted a reply to that thread. Just one sentence. I think she's back. Not even 30 minutes later, I got a private message from an account with no profile picture, no post history, nothing. It said, "Do not let her inside again. It's not her anymore." I didn't sleep that night. I kept reading that message, "It's not her anymore." I didn't know what it meant, and I hated how easily it got under my skin. I didn't want to believe it. But the pieces were stacking too neatly. Her disappearance, the notebooks, the camera, the symbol, the surveillance. And now this warning from a stranger using my supposedly dead uncle's old name? I had to go back. The next morning, I returned to the storage unit. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe that it would be emptied, the writing wiped off, the crates gone. But it was all still there, untouched. Except this time, I searched more carefully. That's when I saw it. Behind one of the plastic bins, taped to the inside of the wall, was a small black case, the kind you'd keep old tapes in. Inside was a labeled VHS tape. It had masking tape across the front in her handwriting. For when you don't recognize me. I stood there in the dark unit, just holding it in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have. Who even has a VHS player anymore? But I remembered that my dad kept all the old junk in the garage, including our family's ancient TV setup. I didn't want to involve him, not after what he said about her visit, but I had no choice. I told him I was stopping by to pick up some of my old stuff. He barely looked up when I walked in. I found the VCR stacked under a pile of yellowed newspapers. It still worked. I hooked it up to a tiny TV in the basement and slid the tape in. There was static. Then my mom's face. She was sitting in the storage unit. Her hair was longer, unbrushed, her face gaunt, eyes puffy like she hadn't slept in days. But it was unmistakably her. She looked straight into the camera. She didn't smile. She said, "If you're watching this, it means I've come back. But I need you to understand, it might not be me." I leaned closer. My heart was pounding in my ears. She continued, voice shaking. "There are gaps. Pieces I don't remember. Things I've said that don't feel like mine. I'll tell you I'm okay. That I needed time. But if you hear those words? If I say I had to clear my head, that's the phrase, they taught me that." She looked down for a second, then back up. "They know how to make you trust me. They know your patterns. They studied us both." Then she started crying. A silent, ugly cry. I tried to resist, I really did. But I don't know if I'm still me anymore. The screen glitched. For a split second, her face flickered. Almost like it changed. Then the tape cut to black. That's it. No ending. No date. No clue when it was recorded. I just sat there in the dark basement, the static buzzing, and one awful question sinking into my chest. If my mom didn't even know whether she was still herself, how the hell was I supposed to know? After I watched the tape, something inside me cracked. I sat there in the basement for a long time, staring at the screen, trying to convince myself it was some kind of elaborate prank. A breakdown. A hallucination. Anything but what it actually felt like, a warning. My mom had been trying to leave a breadcrumb trail. Not just to explain what happened to her, but to prepare me for whatever was coming next. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me sit up. I kept thinking about what she said in the video. If I say I had to clear my head, don't believe me. And the terrifying part? That's exactly what she said to me when she showed up at my apartment. Word for word. The next day, I left work early. I couldn't focus. I kept glancing over my shoulder, catching people's reflections in windows, checking for shadows behind parked cars. I told myself I was being paranoid. But when I got back to my apartment, I noticed something strange. My bedroom window was unlocked. I always lock it. Always. And there were faint scuff marks on the sill, like something had been resting there. Or someone. I checked my laptop. The browser history was cleared. Not a single tab from the last 2 days. My roommate swore she hadn't touched it. She barely even looked at me when I asked. I tried not to panic. Maybe I just forgot. Maybe I cleared it and didn't realize. Maybe the window was a coincidence. I was halfway through talking myself down when my phone rang. Blocked number. I usually let those go straight to voicemail. But this time, I answered. The voice on the other end was male. Low. Calm. But deliberate. He said, "You shouldn't have watched the tape." I froze. Then he said, "They know you've seen it. Do not speak to her again. She's not finished yet." Before I could even ask who it was, the call disconnected. I stood there, staring at my phone, until it buzzed again. A text. No sender info. Just an image. A live photo. Of me. Standing in the storage unit. From yesterday. Taken from the corner. From the exact spot I removed the camera. I didn't go home that night. I drove until the gas tank was almost empty and parked in a random motel 3 towns away. I didn't care where I was, I just knew I couldn't be in my apartment. Not after that photo. Not after that voice. I didn't sleep. I didn't even close my eyes. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that stupid VHS tape like it was a life raft. I kept thinking about her face in that recording, how it flickered. How it didn't quite look human in that 1 second. At sunrise, I drove to my dad's place. I didn't know what else to do. I hadn't seen him since I borrowed the old VCR. When he opened the door, I saw it immediately. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't even ask why I was there. Just let me in. I told him everything. The camera. The notebooks. The warning in the storage unit. The phone call. The photo. I even told him about the symbol, how it was scattered around the city, how it tied back to Uncle Shane. And then I said it. She's not Mom. He didn't argue. He just said, I know. That broke me. Because if he knew, how long had he known? Why hadn't he said anything? That's when he reached into a drawer and pulled out a small flash drive. He handed it to me with shaking hands. She left this. A week before she vanished. I plugged it into my laptop. Only one file. A voice recording. Her voice. But not like the tape, this version sounded lucid, calm, scared. She said, if I go missing, don't look for me. Whatever comes back, it won't be me. If it finds you, it will lie. It remembers how to be me. It practiced, but it isn't. Not really. It needs something. It wants something. I asked him what she meant. What it wanted. He didn't answer. He just looked at me with this hollow expression and said, she came back once already. In 2005. I was 12. I remembered that year. She'd gone on a retreat for 2 weeks, came back distant. Different. But I was a kid, I believed what I was told. And now I was supposed to believe, what? That something wore her face? Twice. I got in my car and drove to the address she gave my dad. Her place. An apartment near the train tracks. I didn't knock. I just opened the door and stepped in. She was there. Waiting. Sitting calmly like she knew I was coming. She smiled, that too wide smile again. I'm glad you're here. I was hoping you'd understand. I asked her what she was. Not who. What? Her smile dropped. You always were a smart one. Then she said the phrase again. I just needed to clear my head. That was it. I turned and left. Didn't speak. Didn't let her say another word. I drove straight to the nearest police station, told them I believed a woman matching my mother's description was mentally unwell and squatting in an apartment under a false name. I gave them the address. I didn't say another thing. By the time they checked the place, it was empty. No trace of her. No furniture. No photos. No notebooks. Just one thing left behind. Drawn in marker on the wall, behind the door. The symbol. A triangle, slanted. With a single dot in the center. Final thoughts, it's been 2 weeks. I've blocked all unknown numbers. I changed apartments. I wiped my computer. I quit my job. I don't know where she is now. Or if she's even still she. But I know this much, if someone you love disappears and comes back and they say they just needed to clear their head, don't let them in.